Okay, so picture this. You've decided to finally learn that language you've always dreamed of speaking. Or maybe you're set on running a marathon. You're super pumped, raring to go. But then, life happens. Work gets crazy. You miss a few days of practice, and that initial excitement fizzles out. Sound familiar? I know I've been there. Well, today's deep dive is all about ditching that all-or-nothing mindset and embracing a totally different approach to change, one built on tiny, almost imperceptible shifts in our daily routines. We're diving into the world of atomic habits, with James Clear as our guide.
You know, what's so refreshing about Clear's approach is that it throws out this idea that we need some huge personality overhaul or complete life makeover to see real progress.
Right. He's not saying you need to become a completely different person overnight. Instead, he's saying, hey, what if the key to unlocking those big, dramatic transformations is actually hidden in the small, seemingly insignificant actions we take every single day?
Exactly. And one of the most powerful examples he uses to illustrate this is the story of the British cycling team in the early 2000s. They were, to put it mildly, not exactly dominating the cycling scene.
Yeah, they were kind of the laughingstock of the cycling world, right?
Pretty much. But then, enter Dave Brailsford, their new performance director, who comes in with this totally radical approach. He called it the aggregation of marginal gains.
Okay, so break that down for me. What did that actually look like in practice?
Well, instead of just focusing on the obvious things like, let's train harder, Brailsford was obsessed with finding 1% improvements in every single facet of the team's performance, things that most people wouldn't even think about.
So we're not just talking about the bikes here.
Nope, we're talking everything from testing different massage gels to find the one that shaved a few seconds off muscle recovery time, to literally teaching the riders the most hygienic way to wash their hands to prevent colds.
He even redesigned their bike seats, right? All in the name of these tiny improvements.
He did, and, they even went as far as painting the inside of the team truck white.
Really? Why on earth would they do that?
Because Brailsford realized that even a tiny speck of dust on the bike could affect its performance. So having a white interior made it easier to spot and clean every last particle.
That's incredible. It's like they were taking a magnifying glass to every single aspect of their performance, no matter how small or insignificant it might have seemed on the surface. So they were basically playing detective with their own habits and routines, searching for those hidden opportunities to eke out a little bit more performance.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. This relentless pursuit of those marginal gains, those tiny 1% improvements, actually led to a complete transformation of British cycling. Within a few years, they went from being practically irrelevant to absolutely dominating the sport.
They went on to win a ton of Olympic gold medals, right? And they even broke the world hour record multiple times.
They did. And it all started with this radical idea of focusing on those tiny gains that, at first glance, might have seemed almost insignificant.
Okay, so this is where I'm always like, yeah, easier said than done. Because I think we've all experienced that initial burst of motivation when we're trying to change a habit or reach a goal. But then life happens, and we hit a wall. We don't see those dramatic results right away. And we start to doubt ourselves.
You're absolutely right. And Clear talks about this in the book. He calls it the valley of disappointment. It's that initial phase where you're putting in the effort, making those small changes, but you're not seeing the big, flashy results you might have been hoping for.
And that's usually when we give up, right? We convince ourselves that it's not working or that we're just not cut out for this.
It's so tempting to throw in the towel at that point. But Clear uses a really powerful analogy to illustrate why it's so important to push through that valley. He compares it to slowly warming up an ice cube. Imagine you're applying heat to an ice cube. You see the temperature rising 25 degrees, 26 degrees, 27 degrees, but it's still an ice cube. Nothing seems to be changing.
You'd start to wonder if the heat was even working right.
Exactly. But then, all of a sudden, you hit 32 degrees, that critical point, and boom, the ice cube melts. That's what Clear calls the plateau of latent potential. It's that magical moment where all those small, consistent efforts you've been putting in finally reach a critical mass and unlock significant, visible progress.
So it's like all that effort we were putting in during the valley of disappointment wasn't wasted. It was like we were slowly building up to that breakthrough moment.
Precisely. And this is why consistency is so crucial when it comes to building habits. It's about trusting the process and playing the long game, even when we don't see immediate results. Because those small, almost invisible changes we make every day, they're like those tiny degrees of heat being applied to the ice cube.
It might not seem like much in the moment, but over time, they have the power to create those radical transformations.
Exactly. And, This idea of consistency ties into another really important concept that Clear introduces in the book, the idea of focusing on systems rather than goals.
Systems over goals.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I feel like we're always told to set goals, to have that finish line in mind. How is focusing on systems different, and how does it actually work in practice?
You're right. We're conditioned to think about goals. Like, I want to lose weight. I want to write a book. But Clear's point is that while goals are great for setting a direction, they often have this short-sighted focus on the end result, not the journey itself, and what happens after you reach that goal.
Right. It's like you hit the goal, you celebrate, and then what's next?
Exactly. It's often back to square one, unless you've changed the underlying habits and routines that got you there in the first place. That's where systems come in. Instead of fixating on the goal itself, focus on building the daily processes, the habits that will naturally lead you towards those outcomes.
So give me a concrete example. How would that look different in real life?
Okay, let's say your goal is to write a novel. That's fantastic. But if you're solely focused on that end goal of holding a finished book in your hand, it can feel incredibly daunting. It's easy to get overwhelmed and procrastinate. Oh, I know that feeling all too well. Staring at a blank page can be terrifying.
Exactly. But a systems-based approach would be to say, okay, what daily actions can I take that will move me steadily towards that goal? Maybe it's writing for 30 minutes every morning before work, or maybe it's committing to writing 1 page a day. No matter what. The goal remains the same, but the focus shifts to building a system, a routine that makes writing a non-negotiable part of your day.
So instead of being fixated on that huge, overwhelming goal, you're breaking it down into these manageable, bite-sized actions.
Precisely. And the beautiful thing is, as you build momentum with those small wins, those daily actions, you start to build confidence and create a sense of self-efficacy. You're no longer just someone who wants to write a book. You're an author, someone who writes every single day.
So it's like those tiny actions, those atomic habits, become the building blocks of a system that ultimately leads you to your goals, almost as a side effect of the process itself.
Exactly. And, one of the things Clear points out is that even if you don't achieve that specific goal, that dream of writing a novel, by focusing on building a system, you've still developed a valuable skill. You've become a more disciplined writer, which is something you can carry with you into countless other areas of your life.
It's like that quote from Atomic Habits. Success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations. It's not about these massive overnight changes. It's about falling in love with the process, with showing up every day and doing those small things that ultimately add up to something truly remarkable.
Absolutely. And it's about remembering that even when we stumble or fall short, we haven't failed. We simply identified an area where we can tweak our system, make a small adjustment, and keep moving forward.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of atomic habits, I think the biggest takeaway for me, hopefully for our listeners, is that we don't have to wait for some grand moment of inspiration or motivation to start building a better version of ourselves. We can start right now, today, with just one small change, one tiny tweak to our routines, and then tomorrow we do it again and again. And slowly but surely, those small actions will compound and lead to those incredible results we all crave.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Remember, even seemingly insignificant changes can lead to extraordinary outcomes when we commit to consistency and embrace the power of those tiny gains.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder as you go about your day. If you could improve any area of your life by just 1% each day, what would it be? And what system, what tiny habits could you put in place to make it happen? Until next time, keep diving.